You know when you've always known something exists, but you don't actually know anything about it? That's what Evangelion was to me for the longest time. I've always seen it around. Shit, even dating back to when I was just an overgrown cumshot, I feel like I'd probably seen this thing somewhere before. But it wasn't until around 2019 when I actually became somewhat interested in the series. I'd see someone talking about it here, a meme there, and I thought, huh? This seems interesting. And that interest takes us to present day, where I finally watched Eva, finishing my metamorphosis into a based and red-pilled threat to middle schoolers. Well, I watched the important ones at least, and my hypothesis was correct. It was very interesting. Nah, I'm just playing. I loved it, for the most part. But even having finished the amazing, stupidly titled Evangelion 3.0 plus 1.0, I still find myself thinking most about the end of Evangelion. I really connected with the end of Evangelion, so I want to talk about it for a bit. By the way, if I get something wrong in this video, that's my bad. I'm not really an analysis guy, so I don't really give a shit about how Tupac's reawakening was foretold in the Grimoire cards, or how the Human Instrument Project would have made Asuka legal or whatever the fuck else. This video has spoilers for all of these, by the way, so if you haven't seen them yet, go watch them, then come back. Or don't, I'm not your dad. Matter of fact, I'm probably as much of a father as Gendo is. The movie opens with Shinji standing in Asuka's hospital room, seeking comfort after having to kill Kaoru. He tries to wake her up. No response. He starts to shake her. No response. He's begging. No response. Until he turns her over, accidentally unbuttoning her shirt. Shinji, feeling he has no one else to turn to, does the only thing he can think of that might make him feel better in that moment. The dude straight up jerks off of this comatose girl's body, only uttering a pathetic "I'm so fucked up" after he's done. Well, yeah, no shit. I imagine when this movie first came out, some poor sods took their kids to see it, and that's what they were immediately greeted with. On the real though, this scene is probably the best example of what Shinji's like in this movie. He's a fucking piece of shit. In the TV series, I thought Shinji was bearable. Yeah, sure, he was a bit of a shit, but I get it, man. The dude had a terrible upbringing and has been tasked with defending the entirety of humanity from these things. Of course he's gonna be a bit fucked up. But he's just something else in the end of Eva, man. Shinji can't understand people, and I don't really think he wants to either. He only wants them around to make him feel better, despite being nearly incapable of expressing himself. And when they inevitably can't make him feel better, he fixates on them sexually, focusing on the things he can understand, essentially rendering them down to a piece of meat. After what happened with Kaoru, Shinji lost the will to do anything. He's gone through so much pain that in his eyes, living just isn't worth it anymore. In Shinji's eyes, everybody, including himself, should just die. On a bit of a lighter note, this movie looks and sounds fucking fantastic. I have no clue how I got some of these shots looking this fluid. Like, man, this is smooth in my brain. And that's impressive. Damn near every keyframe in this movie is gorgeous in its own right. Fuck it, I'd frame this on my wall. And oh my god, the sound design and music are just incredible. Whether it be gunshots, every sound the mass production Evas make, or even just footsteps, everything sounds so fucking good. And the music choice in these scenes is just, immaculate. Hell, I love these songs out of the context of the movie too. There's no better example of all of this than the Asuka vs mass production Evas fight scene. The animation, the sound design, the music choice, the gore, the way Asuka swings around in the cockpit, the way the Evas move, it all culminates to make this scene perfect. If I had to use one word to describe the end of Evangelion, that word would be bleak. Alright, I'm gonna use more words now. There's barely any hope in this story in the first place, and when there is, it's almost always undercut. Even the scene where Asuka is fighting back against the Avas is interspersed with Misato getting ripped in half by a fucking explosion. When compared to the rest of the franchise, the End of Evangelion is unique. It's darker, more confrontational, angrier. Not just in the imagery, which, side note, is also incredibly fucked up in times, but in the way the story's written too. Everything here is back from the show, but it's presented in a much darker way. Things about the characters that were ignored or even seen in a better light in the series are brought into the forefront here, being looked at much more critically, even vitriolically in some cases. To understand why this is, I'm gonna give you a history lesson on some shit you might or might not know already. While it was planned beforehand, The End of Eva was clearly made in part as a response to the negative reception the TV series ending got. People were pretty fucking upset that this show they got really invested in ended in what felt like an abrupt, unsatisfying way. Some people even went as far as to send death threats to series director Hideaki Anno. So Anno basically said, "Fine, you want a different ending? I'll fucking give you one." And then he opened the movie with Shinji sexually assaulting Asuka. Sorry, I just can't get over that. I imagine, at least in some capacity, Anno wanted to get back at the people who sent him those death threats in this film. That's probably why this movie is so angry. That's probably also why Shinji's worst aspects are on full blast here. His character was always, in part, a commentary on otaku after all. But I think this movie is all the better for it. This movie uses Shinji to explore the darkest, deepest reaches of the human mind in a really poignant way. It would be a lot harder to stomach if this was a standalone film, but the series did a really great job building up Shinji to this crescendo. Even when I don't want to, I still empathize with Shinji. And how could you not? Have you seen the shit that goes down in the second half of this film? So we come back from our piss and or existential dread break during the mid-movie credits. Rei decides instead of getting molested by Gendo, she's gonna fuse with Lilith and go to Shinji, handing the fate of humanity to him in the process. At this point, Shinji has gone completely insane, after having just seen Unit 2's mangled, disembodied corpse. And now this shit. But Shinji gets pacified by seeing Kaoru again. Human instrumentality begins. This sequence is what made The End of Evangelion one of my favourite films. The reason I love this part of the movie so much isn't really for the story or visuals, which are fantastic in their own right. It's for the emotions behind them. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but I've been pretty depressed for the past 3 years or so. There are peaks and valleys, of course, but even on the good days, there's always that shadow lingering over you, you know? This extends to the rest of the film as well, but this part especially feels like an unfiltered expression of those feelings. It's pretty well known that Hideaki Anno was in a pretty bad place when he made Evangelion, and it shows in this part of the film. It's guttural, it's oppressive, it's disturbing, it's even serene at times. It's confusing. And that's exactly what these emotions feel like. There are scenes in here that feel like watching a panic attack I had, or re-experiencing one of those nights where I just couldn't stop thinking, or a strange serenity when all the mental noise finally stops. It feels weird to say this considering the shit this film contains, but The End of Eva has given me a sense of comfort ever since I first watched it. Like, knowing someone else has experienced the same type of emotions I'm going through right now makes me feel a bit less alone in all this. And it feels even better knowing that the person who made this film got out of their downward spiral. It gives me hope. Of course, everything isn't instantly gonna get better because I watched a film, but having watched The End of Evangelion, I feel like I understand myself a little bit more. And even if I'll never meet them, I'll always be grateful to Arno and everybody who worked on this film for that. Behind the dazzling visuals, beautiful sounds, mind-bending plot, and, you know, the world as we know it kinda fucking ending, this is a movie about broken people. Whether that be the characters within it, its creator, or if it resonates with you, even yourself. As much as I hate to admit it, I can relate to some aspects of Shinji. He's the part of me I hate, the part of me that runs away, the part of me that uses escapism instead of living in my reality, the part of me that hates making decisions, the part of me that can't be open emotionally, the part of me that doesn't understand people, and a part of me that hates them for it. The part of me that thinks everybody, including myself, should just die. But even after everything, after Shinji's completely given up hope, choosing a dream over his reality, taking the rest of humanity with him, he realizes it's not what he wanted. A world without barriers is painless, sure, but it's a world without happiness either. A world where we don't really exist. Life is painful, but ironically enough, that pain is what makes the happy moments and meaningful connections we do have worthwhile. It's what makes us human. After realizing what truly matters to him, Shinji decides to end human instrumentality. It's the hardest decision he'll ever have to make. Sure, he can end instrumentality, but things will never be the same as they once were. The people he's hurt, the mistakes he's made, and the ones he will make, none of that will change. The ramifications of his actions will be with him for the rest of his life, seeping into every corner of it. He knows dark days are ahead of him, but regardless, with hope in his heart, he decides to keep moving forward. And I think that's beautiful.